All right. Hello. I've got some things open here already. Sorry, I was trying to debug something just before I went live with all of you. So, anyways, welcome to another live stream. I am Jeremy Daly. I am the CEO and one of the founders over here at Ampt. And again, just quickly, if you don't know what Ampt is a tool that allows developers to quickly build applications by just writing application code, and then Ampt deploys the AWS environments for you and sets up everything and automatically determines what it is that you need, helps you manage and orchestrate those things. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today because the subject today essentially is building automated workflows or creating, or I guess enabling automated workflows using AWS or in AWS and using Ampt to do that. So we got a lot of cool things to show you today. So let's make sure that we're live in all the places we are supposed to be live here. So first off, let me turn on Do Not Disturb so that we don't get anybody bothering me here. And then let's double check. Let's make sure that we are in fact live on these different platforms here. So let's see, we are live now, and let's check it out. So YouTube, we're live on YouTube. We are live on LinkedIn, I hope. Got a couple people watching us on LinkedIn. That's cool. Yep. All right, good. And we should be on live on X, or on Twitch. Says we're offline. Hold on, let me just double check. Should be live there, and then we should be live on X as well. So we are live. No, where are we? Why are we not live on X and the other one? Hold on a second. Let me just figure this out. Make sure that enabling. Oh, starting soon. Are we not live? We should be live. Okay, yeah. So we are live on some of these, but not on the other ones. So I don't know why those didn't start. So let me just give me a second here. Why does it say starting soon? We should be live. So, Well, I don't know how to make it go live if it's not live. Starting soon in 24. Oh, uh-oh. What did I do here? All right, give me a second here trying to get this figured out. For some reason, we didn't go live on Twitch and on X. And now it says it's going to go live. It's going to go live after that. So starting soon, 1 second. So this says supposed to be live. All right. I don't know why we are not live on Twitch or X, and that's frustrating to me. But it does appear that LinkedIn is live. Okay, so we're still live on LinkedIn. That's good. And we're live on YouTube. Okay, well, so I don't know what's going on with X and what's going on with the other one there, with Twitch, but it appears as though we are not live, and I don't know why. All right. Well, anyways, we will stream on on YouTube and on LinkedIn. All right. Anyways, all right, let's get into it. So a couple things that we often talk about with Ampt is we try to talk about we try to explain what it is that we do, and it's a very different approach than what you're probably familiar with. So if you've been using, the CDK or Pulumi or Terraform or even SST or serverless framework or Arc codes or architect framework, things like that, you are writing an application that is somehow getting compiled down into infrastructure as code, right? We think about infrastructure as code. It's basically sort of a mapping of the cloud graph that you're creating. It's very, very powerful. You have access to pretty much every primitive that's out there. Depending on how you do it, things work a little bit differently. But essentially, you have access and control over all of these different underlying primitives. Primitives are great, and they are very, very powerful. And there's a lot of talk about how much abstraction is built into primitives themselves. And that's an important thing to understand because, again, you don't actually have full access to everything that's happening in that remote database that you're using or on that compute platform. A lot of that is being abstracted away from you, but you really have to go in and compose all of these different things in order to create an application. So let me jump over to just a quick sort of overview of how we think about this. So there is a bunch of things that we need when we're building an application in the cloud. So we have some sort of compute module or some sort of compute, EC2 or Lambda or Fargate or whatever we're running in the background in order to actually process and run application code. Then we need some sort of HTTP interface, whether that's an API gateway or an ALB or something that allows us to route HTTP traffic to get to the compute that we're actually trying to do or potentially map directly to another service. Then you need some sort of a CDN, right? We want to make sure that we're not taking every request from all around the world and routing it all into a single place. Yes, multi-region, all those other things. But usually we want to put some sort of CDN in front of it, especially when we're caching content that doesn't need to be dynamic. So this might be images or JavaScript files or HTML pages or even API responses can be cached at the edge depending on what you're doing. And then you add in something like a data store. So again, SQL or MySQL or Postgres or DynamoDB or something like that, Mongo, you've got some way to store data. Then you've got storage for like blob files, so maybe you're generating PDFs, or again, you're serving up static assets and you need to store those somewhere. You have secrets that allow you to connect into different services, maybe third-party services, things like that. You usually have some sort of a scheduling feature, right? Think of it as cron tabs. Cron tabs don't work the same way when you're using distributed systems in the sense of you're maybe using something like CloudWatch. I guess they're not called CloudWatch events or CloudWatch schedules anymore, but there's all these different things, event bridge schedulers and some of those other things. And then you have an event bus. Like oftentimes when you're building distributed systems, you're not synchronously communicating with all these different services. You're usually using some sort of event-driven approach, or you're putting something onto the network into an event bus, and then you have other things that are listening to it, and they're processing those. We think about that as sort of orchestration, choreography. And then you have some more advanced things that sometimes you need. So maybe it's a queue. Maybe you have a bunch of stuff that's coming in. You want to save that stuff. You want to process that stuff, whether it's in order. It's might be a FIFO type queue. It might be an unordered queue. But the point is that essentially you want to be able to control back pressure to make sure that downstream systems aren't overwhelmed. If you get a whole bunch of requests, you just want to make sure you capture those. We talked about this, I think, last week, or maybe the week before when we talked about EDAs. We talked a lot about this idea of the sort of storage first pattern, making sure that we're capturing stuff. And then WebSockets. WebSockets are an entirely different sort of beast when you're doing distributed systems. If you're familiar with API Gateway supports WebSockets. It's a little bit different than maybe your traditional WebSockets would work. You're using Lambda functions generally to process the requests off of those. Big thing with WebSockets on API Gateway is they don't maintain groups, which something like AppSync does, right? So you can do broadcast messages. So AppSync might be better there than other things. There's also the AWS IoT, which surprisingly works really, really well for those sort of broadcast channels and things like that as well. So again, more things to think about. And then you've got workflows, right? So AWS is great with step functions, or if you want to do something more durable, or not more durable than step functions, but maybe not as specific as step functions. You might be running these long-running tasks that do a bunch of different things. Yes, there's some waiting in there and so forth. Maybe you have some orchestration. Maybe you build your own coordinator or state machine by using Dynamo to save different states and things like that. People do a lot of different things, but you want to be able to build workflows. And then finally, you want to be able to integrate, right? So you want to be able to connect to different services. AWS does a lot of things and a lot of things really, really well, but maybe you want to use Datadog or Baselime or one of these other, maybe Honeycomb in order to do your observability. So you're shipping data somewhere else. Maybe you want to use Memento in order to do the caching because you don't like the way that Elasticache pricing works or something like that. Well, now you need to make sure you have those integrations and you can make sure that you manage that egress and that ingress into your account. There's a lot of things to think about. Now, let's just go back to compute for a second. Compute gets even more complex because you're not necessarily, in today's world, if you're not running hybrid applications, now you very well could run everything on a Lambda function or a bunch of Lambda functions and do it that way. A lot of success with that. But what we also have been seeing is, again, an expansion of this where it's like, well, if you got a high velocity webhook, or maybe you've got some processing engine or something, it makes a lot of sense to run those in containers, not just because the cold starts, you don't necessarily get the cold starts. Again, you're paying for, virtual CPUs to be running all the time. But if you've got the traffic to support that, sometimes it makes sense. Again, that can bring the cost down dramatically if it is really, really high. So you got to think about that. And then, of course, FAS and the functions as a service. So things like Lambda functions are absolutely amazing. They are great for processing, small batches of things, reading off of streams, very, very event-driven, love those things. And then finally, you've got edge compute. So whether that's Lambda at edge or CloudFront functions, or, even if, outside of the AWS realm, there's a whole bunch of other ones, Cloudflare workers and those sort of things. This is another thing to think about, right? And the idea is that you have to essentially assemble all these different pieces in order to make in order to build and deploy an application. And it's not so much the individual services themselves. You can grab the scheduler off the shelf. You can grab S3. You can say DynamoDB, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use EventBridge as my event bus. But it's really the connections between all these things that get really, really complicated. So the idea here is to say, what if we took all of those services, right, and we actually encapsulated them into sort of a single installable unit, and maybe think about it that way. And that's what we've done with Ampt, and we've essentially created these things called Ampt environments. And what an Ampt environment is it's a collection of all these different services that you would normally need to use when you're building an application. And it's all packaged and controlled and deployed directly into an isolated AWS account. So what's nice about putting this into a separate AWS account is all of these services, we are 100% serverless first. That doesn't mean we're serverless only, but we're serverless first. And we try to think of it and say, if I had nothing running in this account, how much can I actually deploy, or what services can I configure and have ready to go that I don't have to pay for? Because again, I may want to have hundreds of these for my different developers or for different preview stages and so forth. So an Ampt environment, when we deploy that into an AWS account on your behalf, that costs $0 to run. $0 when it's sitting there idle. And the thing that's really great about these Ampt environments are they're pre-provisioned. So we have a whole big pool of these Ampt environments that we've got up and running that have things like CDNs already deployed, so you don't have to wait 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is, to deploy a different CDN. You don't have to wait to deploy the DynamoDB table or create a bunch of these different GSIs. We deploy a whole bunch of Lambda functions that do some orchestration work. We've got VPCs with Fargate, a Fargate container, or I guess ECS, all configured for you, ready to go. In order to do that, we can easily provision App Runner and some of these other things. But basically, we pre-provision a whole bunch of stuff so it's ready to go. So it's sort of this empty, sort of blank slate that's ready for you to start processing your application code. Like I said, every single one of these is completely isolated. So again, you don't have to worry. Every time you spin up an Ampt environment, it's its own thing. You do not have to worry about it competing with other resources and so forth. If you're connecting to third-party services, like again, Memento or something else that maybe you're connecting to MongoDB Cloud or serverless MongoDB or whatever it's called, something like that. If you're connecting outside of this environment, then yes, that is something to think about, but we've got secrets management that can help you manage that. They're also highly secure by design. So the idea here is that when you give a developer, nothing wrong with developers, I'm a developer myself, but when you give developer a blank slate they can basically run any service they want to. They can put into that IAC pretty much any service they want to. Then you do run into the potential issue of maybe spinning up something they shouldn't have, maybe spending too much money because they configured something incorrectly. Maybe it's not secure because they opened up an S3 bucket and they did that by accident. So there's just a whole bunch of things that can go wrong. The idea here is to basically be entirely locked down, by design, minimal IAM permissions that connect these different things, and we'll get into how some of that stuff evolves. Also, it's auditable, right? So these are running in an AWS account. You can go in, you can look at these things when you self-host. You can go in and you can see exactly what's running, so you have the sense of what's there. You can plug into CloudWatch logs and CloudWatch events and all those other things, audit trails, things like that you have the ability to really see what's happening within these accounts. The other thing is they're highly extensible. So even though we create a series of connections between these different services in order to create the patterns that we believe are the most powerful for the majority of the applications that you're going to build, and we also want to make it extensible. So you can connect to any AWS service that you want to. You can connect to any third-party service that you want to. And we've talked a number of different ways about how we can even add more extensibility, make it more flexible as you build apps using Ampt. The other thing that is super great about this is it's evolvable. So there's a lot of talk about abstractions and things like that. Gregor Hoped, I always say his last name wrong. He has a bunch of great talks about art, abstractions versus illusions, abstractions versus illusions. Very, very cool stuff that he talks about. But again, it's sort of like, you're providing an abstraction on top of some of these different services. You don't want to hide a lot of the underlying complexity because there are things that you need to know. But this is what's really interesting. As there are different features and services and capabilities and things that you need to be able to do, the architecture below is actually evolvable in the sense that it can change and it can adapt without you necessarily having to rewrite anything at the top level. So there's still need to know the concepts of distributed systems and how some of that stuff works, but we can evolve the architecture underneath that maps back to the code that you write. So you don't have to change anything, and you can do some pretty interesting things there. And then finally, an important thing about Ampt environments is, I know this has been a concern because we do something that we call infrastructure from code, which essentially is you write application code, whether that's your Next.js app, whether that's your Hono backend, whether it's Astro, or you're using a front end like React, or whatever you're doing, you drop that code into an Ampt environment, and the Ampt environment reads that in. We do something very cool called runtime introspection, where we look at your code, we figure out which events you're listening for, what schedules you want to run, what your HTTP interfaces are you're trying to use, all that kind of stuff. And then we automatically deploy and configure all the necessary resources that are needed. We configure some of these pre-provisioned resources. So this is very, very powerful. A lot of people are concerned. They're like, oh, what if it changes, if it's different in one environment, different in the other? It's not. Consistent. These are deterministic deploys. Every time you deploy the same exact code into a different environment, it will process and deploy that the same way. Now, that can evolve, right? And we can evolve the underlying architecture that's there, but the performance and the actual what the application is doing is the same every single time. And again, we do a bunch of optimizations I'll talk about in a minute. So another really great thing, as I mentioned, you can have as many of these environments as you want. Each one of these environments, when it sits idle, costs $0 to run unless you have some data stored in there or something like that. But this is super powerful because you can create as many of these, have as many of them on standby as you want to, and then you can grab one of these and deploy code into it and test an application in just under a minute or so, right? So it's already there, it's all ready to go. Also allows you to, again, do things like previews, and then when you're ready to deploy your stages and stuff like that. So you have all of these different things that are all completely separate. Now, again, Maybe this sounds like a nightmare. How do I manage all these different accounts? Well, that is one of the big things that Ampt, that's the main part of the Ampt service. So yes, we did build these very cool installable Ampt environments that can run in these AWS accounts. But in order to manage all of this, in order to really grab the value from it, we've created our orchestration service that essentially runs on top of it. And that's essentially what Ampt, sort of the basic, the baseline, I guess, of what Ampt is. So the Ampt orchestration service provides all your account vending and provisioning for you. So that's all taken care of. You don't have to worry about setting up your AWS accounts and deploying an Ampt environment into it. We are talking about allowing you to do some of that manually, so that you could run, just a single Ampt environment if you want to, and have it do that work for you. But really, the idea of just automatically creating these accounts and doing the provisioning is super helpful. It's a main part of what we do for you. The other thing is that there's a built-in deployment engine. So we have CI/CD. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. The idea is to say, look, you just connect this to your GitHub repo and it's all taken care of for you, right? No complicated build steps in terms of you have to create all these different pipelines. You have to map these different pipelines. You have to say, okay, well, if I'm going to do previews, I got to write all this extra code that says, well, deploy this version here, and then I got to tear that down. I got to worry about the cost. You don't have to worry about that with Ampt. We manage all that for you. We give you user management and access control, so which users are able to access which applications and all things like that. That's all baked in for you. We also do app monitoring, the logs, the metrics, and the alerting. So we reuse as much of AWS's built-in services as possible. So even things like budget alerts, those are all running in AWS. Those are not things that we manage directly or have a different service that does that. Obviously, we collect some information. We have information that we have on that. But your metrics and your logs, that's all recorded into your AWS account. And then we give you a centralized interface that allows you to actually view that stuff. I did a live stream maybe a month ago now, a little more than that, showed off our new logs view, our invocation view, which is really, really helpful for debugging and seeing what's going on with your application. And then we do monitor the application as well to make sure that the performance is there and things are working correctly. And then we have the ability to easily orchestrate these developer sandboxes for you. So every developer just grabs I want to work on this particular app, type in Ampt, boom, spins up a developer sandbox, instant sync, right? It's all running in the cloud. I just did a thing yesterday on Gitpod and code spaces. You can even use those, right? So you don't even have to worry about downloading anything to your machine. Just, I just want to run this fully isolated, completely production parity version of the application. And I want to run a couple of quick tests, maybe change some things here, and try some things. And then if everything looks great, I'll sync it back in, or I'll create a pull request, and then we can test that and then merge that back in. I mean, the workflows are very, very helpful. And then we give you centralized secrets management. So the thing that's great about this is that every individual account has secrets that are built into it, but we can centralize those so that we actually know every single environment that's running an Ampt, or that's running an Ampt environment for a particular app within a particular organization. All of those different environments, we actually maintain the secrets at the top level. Those all get inherited, and then we can actually push changes out. So if you make an organizational wide change and you have 1,000 Ampt environments running below that, we actually would push those changes out to every single one of those in real time. So what's great is that you can use that for things like feature flags, but of course rotating secrets, and then just whatever else you're doing. So you change your API key or something like that, or you want to shut off a particular service or a feature or whatever. It's very, very cool. The things that you can do with that. And then finally, this is one of the things that we really, really love about the way that we've designed Ampt, and we think you'll love it as well, because this is sort of the big thing that we are trying to do is we have a built-in architecture optimizer. And the way that this works is we build what we call productized patterns. So all of those different services, all those primitives I showed you before, those are all connected. And there's different versions of those primitives, right? When you think about a queue, you've got SQS queues, you've got Kinesis, then there's Kinesis data fire hose. There's a bunch of different ways that, DynamoDB streams, right? There's a bunch of different ways that you can do queuing within AWS. which one you use is very dependent upon the workload that you're trying to do, the throughput that you're trying to process. And so the way that our architecture optimizer works behind the scenes is we look at that and we can actually merge, or we can actually morph the different underlying patterns and adjust those underlying patterns to optimize themselves, not just for cost, but also for performance. And it does it behind the scenes. And one of the really, really cool things that we built is what we call smart compute. So by default, every bit of compute that you write, especially within a developer sandbox, and generally in preview environments, those get deployed to a Lambda function. Why? Because a Lambda function is free when it's not running, and it works really, really well, and it emulates your compute environment, perfectly. But when you are in production, well, maybe your webhook needs to be running on, maybe it needs to be running on a container-based system, right? So we use App Runner. We can automatically switch that to App Runner. Maybe you have a long-running task, and you say, okay, well, I wrote this code that does this little thing, and that's a task, and I've got it, defined as a task, but all of a sudden now I need that to run for 15, 20, 30 minutes. Maybe it's an hour. Maybe I run some ETL. Maybe I build a workflow. Who knows? The point is that you have the flexibility to write whatever you want to, and we'll say, okay, a Lambda function is not going to work for this. We'll automatically deploy this into a Fargate task for you, and you don't have to change your code. You don't have to do anything. We'll just automatically do it for you. Again, we can make those optimizations. There's a lot more that we want to do with optimizations. We've been running a lot of pretty large workloads right now, and we have several customers who are using Ampt to run some good-sized workloads, and we're seeing some interesting patterns emerge from those. And those are the kind of things that we're continuing to work on and continuing to do the optimizations for. So a lot more to come on that. But essentially, with this orchestrator service, you get this management console. I've shown it to you probably 100 times or more, and I'll show it to you again today. You get the CLI, which is the Ampt CLI, which again can run locally on your local machine, or it can run in Gitpod or Codespaces or somewhere remote. And then that SDK, we've seen the SDK a number of times. That is what gives you access to sort of, they're like primitives. We have primitives like what we call like HTTP data. Some of these other things, they do represent a connection to primitives. We try not for them to be super leaky abstractions, but it is, I think, helpful for you to understand a little bit about what's behind them and how, part of the reason why we're using them to do what we do. Okay, last bit I'll talk about, and then we'll actually move on to some stuff. I've already been talking for a while, and I do have a bunch of things I want to get to. So what we did is, one of the ways that this works is we did build a cloud runtime. I don't want you to get too excited. It's not Dino. It's not Dino. It's not Bun. It's not a separate JavaScript runtime. It's not the LLRT, the low latency runtime. It's Node, right? And basically it's Node 20, but it's a patch on top of Node 20. We use a layer on a couple different, depending on where it runs. But we use Node 20 behind the scenes. We also have a version on Node 18. We got rid of the Node 16 one that's been deprecated now. But it does a couple of cool things for you, like automatic TypeScript transpilation. So you do not have to run a TS build or whatever, a TSC build, is that what it is, or run TSC, to compile your code to JavaScript and then deploy it that way. We actually can do that live, so it just saves a bunch of steps, so that way you don't have to worry about it, especially when you're in a dev mode. And that gives you the source maps and the config paths and things like that are built in. We also give it this web API polyfill. So if you're familiar with Node and streams in Node, it's like a read stream versus a readable stream, which is a web API and so forth. Some of the more modern, frameworks like Hono and Elysia, they use, or IDI Router, they use the web API sort of standards, or web standards, I guess, in order to do some of these things. So they're fetch-based. So we've actually polyfilled that so that it uses a sort of the browser web standards fetch-based polyfill, and we use that for a bunch of different things. So it just gives you some more flexibility. It's really nice. Streaming support is built in. If you've built something on Lambda and you're doing streaming with Lambda, you have to change the way that it spits things out. You have to change the handler for it. It's kind of a pain. You got to then say, oh, I also have to move to a Lambda function URL. I can't use API gateway. It's a lot. It's done for you. You don't have to worry about it. If you want to stream, stream. If you don't want to stream, don't stream. That's your choice. It's just how you spit the data back with whatever framework that you're using to return it. Or if you return a readable stream, again, it just works. We also have a bunch of different event adapters in here. So depending on what type of compute is processing it. So Lambda function does, event service mappings very, very well. Not so much when it's linked to a Fargate container or to maybe app run or some of these other things. It's all taken care of for you. And then we give you dev mode support. And this is one of the really, really cool features of Ampt. This is what you see all the time. You make a change, you hit save, it's instantly synced and deployed and ready to go. That is a dev mode feature that's part of the runtime that we build for you, which is super helpful. So again, you have, what's nice about this is it runs on Fast and Lambda, it runs on Fargate, it runs an app runner, so you can have that broader, you can have a more powerful, container service running behind the scenes. And we're working on adding some more capabilities into Edge. Right now, we sort of have our own Edge thing that we use, but we want to extend this as well to make this possible to run in the Edge. And really what we think about with our cloud runtime is that it's a self-provisioning runtime. So the idea of it being a self-provisioning runtime is that, again, you take a bunch of code that you've written, just application code. And yes, the application code may have some hints, right? You may say, I want this to time out after a certain amount, things like that. Things that are very, very specific, sort of runtime semantics, things that are specific to it. You can go ahead and take that code, drop it into an Ampt environment, and that Ampt environment will figure out from that code exactly what needs to happen and provision and configure all of the surrounding resources in order to make that work. We think that's very cool. We think that's the future of the way that cloud development is going to work. We think it's very much so like a cloud computer, right? All these different different resources or primitives we talk about, those are all just subsystems in a larger computer. Other abstractions can help you figure out, how to, you don't have to worry about memory collection and or garbage collection or setting memory, things like that. There's a lot of things that can be done if the system is smart enough to do that. So that's what we believe. So anyways, that is the overview of that. I know I probably took way too much time to explain that, but I did want to give that baseline because I think it's important to understand how the rest of this stuff is going to work. Okay, let's jump right into it. So a couple weeks ago, and hopefully if you have any questions or comments about that, please jump in and ask me, and I will do my best to figure that out. Okay, so I actually created a demo several weeks ago that was for that was for 11T. So let me just do this quickly here. So I was just playing around with the Git stuff this morning, and we had a tiny issue, so I had to go and figure out something else. I couldn't quite get this all prepared. But anyways, I'm gonna just do let's see. I'm gonna remove the dot. Let's see, rm-rf.git. See if this will work. Okay, so I'll remove the Git repo from that. Okay, so just quickly, this was a demo that I put together for 11T, and I'll just give you a quick overview of how this works so that we can see what this is doing here. So this is just, if you're familiar with 11T, static site builder, static site generator, all runs in JavaScript. Very, very cool. Big fan of it. What we did is we built a quick little blog that was running here, and on the back end of it, we added Hono. We added Hono's streaming support. Let's see what else we had. We used our SDK, and then we were using a couple other things, but we were using these functional components to generate some data that we could then send down after the site had loaded, so that it was sort of these would be enhanced, right? So these progressively enhanced sites. All right. None of that is super important, but if you want to go and see how I built this site or how I built what I built here, go back and check out building, I think it was progressively enhanced sites using HTMX or something to that effect. Anyways, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I want to copy, so I actually want to copy this. So let me open, I'm going to create a whole new thing here. So let me find in folder. I want to reveal in Finder. Let's do that. Okay, and I'm going to create... Sorry, this is off screen, but I'm just going to come over here quickly. And go back one here. All right, so new, oops, apologies. Give me 1 second here. I can't paste it onto itself. No, I understand that. I just want to Also didn't want to do that. Hold on. Oh, Matt, this is the magic of live TV. So hold on one second. Let me rename this. Get test here. All right, and then let me move this out like that. And see if that worked. 11t get test. Okay, that worked. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd dot slash, and then this was, I renamed this 11t get test like that. All right, now we'll open this here. All right. Okay, so we have a fresh thing here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the package.json file here. Now, what we do with this, which is super helpful, is in your package.json, we just map this to your app and your org that you're using, and then you can set the runtime and the build runtime. You don't actually need to set these anymore. If it's a new app, it will use 20 as the default. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove app here. I can keep demo; it doesn't really matter. But this is just going to allow me to create a new app, because generally what would happen is if I connected to that, it's going to connect and it's going to say, oh, you're already connected, this is already an app, so it's just going to connect you to that. I want to create an entirely new app in this system. So I'm going to go ahead and run Ampt here. What this should do is this should come up and prompt me for a name for my app, so we will call this 11t get test like that. It already knows I want this to be in that org, and you can see that it updates my my package.json now to have that get test in there, or to have the new name of it there. All right, so what this is doing now is this is an example of how the Ampt service or the orchestrator works, right? Essentially what this is doing is this is coordinating with the centralized system to say, okay, you need a developer account for this particular org, and what this has just done is created a new AWS account, basically pulled from a pool of AWS accounts that were already pre-configured with Ampt environments. This has now taken that and assigned it to me, and now this demo 11e get test and Jeremy-Ampt, which is is how I'm logged into the system, is automatically up and running here now. So I get this URL. I can go ahead and open this URL. Let's hope it opens in the right thing. Here we go. So this is the app that we built last time. So I'll zoom in a little bit so that we can see what this is doing. So essentially, this is just getting generated by the system. The way that this works, if I refresh this, you'll see that this says loading there. You see that the login isn't quite, it takes a second, gives a flash. That's because the way that we built this, if we go and we look at it here, if we go into site and into layouts and into base here, we are using HTMX, and we are, as soon as the site loads, we're calling this API/logged in. Anyways, there's a bunch of cool things that are happening here. That's not what we want to talk about. What we want to talk about is basically how we can automate the ability to deploy these now to AWS. Like how do we actually get these deployments to work automatically for us? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to turn this into a Git repository, because we do need it to be attached to Git. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to GitHub here, and I'm going to go into this Ampt demo thing here, and it is quite possible, because we just deployed a new feature. So we deployed a new feature literally this morning, and we may have an issue, but I know Ben is diligently working on it in the background. All right, so let's see if this works. And anyways, this part will work. We know that. Okay, so let's create a new repository here. So I'll just create a new repository, and let's call this 11t get test like that. It is available. Great. We'll keep it private for now. We'll create the repository. This will give us our instructions. We could do this in here. There's some things you can do. We do have some git pass-throughs, but I'm just going to open this over here and just do a git init, and then I'm going to do a git add to get all of the stuff that we want here, and then I will come over here and copy this, and then we'll just go ahead and, ooh, what did I do wrong? Oh, I didn't clear. Try that again. Git commit. Always got to do that. Init commit. I don't know. I like typing this stuff out. I know there's all kinds of features built in, but I'm a typer. Okay, that should have worked probably. Refresh this, and there we go. Okay, so git test, we are good to go. And we have a Git repository. So now we should be able to, from here, anytime we wanted to check something in, we can easily do that. All right, so I'm gonna close that down just so that we're here now. All right, so we've got our Git repository. We're all synced up. And then you can do things like git pull, for example, and that will, like, you know, again, it does some of those pass-throughs for you. Checking in some code and things like that, it's better to use, you know, just the standard terminal. But we tried to make some of this stuff a little bit easier for you. Working on making it even easier. Also, would love your feedback on that. Okay, so we've done that. So now what we want to do, though, is we actually want to open this up. And just to be clear, too, again, we are, well, I can show this. I'll open here, reload this. It looks like, again, some updates happening in the background. So this is our 11 git test right here. This is that environment that I talked about that I'm running right now. This is my environment. This is completely isolated, right? So all my logs for this environment, completely isolated. My deployments, there won't be any deployments because it's a developer sandbox, but everything is built in here. It all is running right here for me, and it's all completely isolated. I have full control over what's happening. Data, storage, tasks, all that stuff, logs, it's all here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to connect to Git. So I have a settings here. This is my org level settings for demo, and I go into Git and I have a couple of different things that I've already connected. So I've already connected my Ampt demo app. I installed the app there. I think we could probably uninstall it and install it, but let's see how it works. How it goes. So I'm going to go back into the apps here, go into the Git test, and then in the settings here, we also have a Git that allows us to, and this might be one of those things where we might have broke it. Let's see. Well, let me go in and check here. So we are getting an error. Failed to load that. Okay, well, all right. So that is a bit of a bummer. We might have to do another live stream that shows this because I do think that, yeah, we might have broken that. Let me check one other thing here and see if this is working out of curiosity. No, it looks like we broke Git altogether. All right. We're going to fix this, and then we'll come back and we'll show you that. But let me show you why it's broken. I'll show you exactly of what we did. And actually, you know what I could probably do, just out of curiosity, because I do want to show this, but if I can't load the Git page itself, let me just send a message to Ben. Ooh, the demo gods. Gotta love them. Okay. I was going to see if I could show... Do I have another one of these that's set up? I have so many of these demo apps. I don't know if I have any of them connected to... let me just go back here. I think I did one with Astro. Was it Astro Test? No, that wouldn't have it. Astro demo. How about this one? All right, this one's got a prod. Let's see. Does this have Git set up? Well, the Git page itself isn't loading at all, so that's... Actually, none of these pages are loading now. Why is that? Oh, hold on. Maybe if I... Oh, well, all right. Maybe I broke something myself. Hold on. Let me go back. Let's check this out. All right. Here we go. Refresh this. Let me go into settings. Go into Git. Okay. It's loading now. So I don't know what I did, but it's happening. All right, so I'm going to change this to the Ampt demo here. And then this was the 11 Git test. We want to use this one. I'm going to confirm this. Okay, and it's working. All right, so anyways, it might just be that my dashboard was a little bit out of sync. Anyways, so that's what I did. I just linked this to, and it was sort of a roundabout way to get there. So apologies for that. But normally you just go, you click on Git and you link it to, link it to the Git repo that you want to link it to. So now what I have here is this is a linked to 11 Git tests. I have this very cool feature here where It depends on what you're doing. It depends on what you're working on. If you're working on a little script or a little small app and a side thing, and you just like to just get the changes out there and you just want to run deploy, I get it. Just whatever. You only live once, right? So sometimes you just want to push stuff out. If you're building something that's a little more involved and you've got a team of people working on it and so forth, you probably don't want to just deploy this directly from your CLI. That's sort of a big security risk. So you do have the option here that you can just uncheck this, and that disables the ability for you to run deploys to the to any permanent stage within the application. Okay. So I'm gonna actually allow this for now, but we can always turn that off. Okay, so then the other thing we want to do is we want to enable previews. So the way that previews work is that every time you create a pull request, this is going to go ahead and generate a new environment and deploy your application into that environment automatically for you. And then we want to add a push deploy, which means anytime somebody pushes something to main, we want to go ahead and deploy this to prod. So I'm going to go ahead and click add there, and then I'm going to click save, and we've successfully updated our Git configuration, and now we have this Git configuration all set up for us. All right, we haven't deployed a prod environment yet. So actually, let me do this. I'm going to go into settings. I'm going to go back into my Git. I'm going to disable allow CLI deployments. And I'm going to click save. All right, so now I don't have I only have this environment here. And I'll go back to my editor. And I am going to try to deploy now. So I'm going to say I want to deploy this to prod. Like this. Can't do it, right? My administrator has disabled my ability to do that. Okay, so I can't do that, but I would like to, show some sort of a change. So if we look at our app here, which is labeled document, that's super helpful. So it says, welcome to our blog, and we want to change that content. So let's go to the index page here, and it says, welcome to our blog. So this is going to say, welcome to my blog, and I don't like the purple, so we're going to change this to some annoying, ugly red text like this. Now, this is synced, okay? So if I go back here and I refresh this, actually, it's not going to change because I need to be running dev mode, sorry. So if I'm running dev mode, this is just telling 11t to update in the background as I make changes and so forth. Now I'm running this here in my developer sandbox live. I also, again, depending on your workflow, I can run this on my local host as well, right? So when I run it on my local host, what's cool is if I change this to this just automatically refreshes it. There's like a thing that's listening for it. Whereas my actual thing here, I would have to refresh in order to make that happen. Okay, anyways. We don't care about the local development. We care about the remote workflows. All right, so this is running in my developer sandbox. I can see that this is working. This is exactly what I want to deploy to the system. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to make it easier on myself. And I'm actually going to do a Git branch, and I'll call this my update. Super good name, and then I will check out my update like this. So now I'm in this here. I will clear this. Now again, there should be a git ignore in here. It's just ignoring .ampt. Generally, what we probably would want it to do is we would want it to ignore this static folder as well. In this particular case, we do because because 11t generates the code every time for this. So we actually do want to eliminate that. We don't need that. And then we can just do a git status over here, and we'll see that we've got these updated. And so we'll run git add and git commit my change and git push. And I don't think I have automatic branch creation created. Oh, I do. Okay, so there we go. All right, so now up here in my Git repo, I have a new my update. And my update has my changes here. Great. And I want to go ahead and actually, I'm sorry. So I've created this. I can see this locally. I can download whatever I want to do. But I want to create a pull request. So I go in here and I say, okay, this is my change to the title. right? Super helpful. I mean, I can add my reviewers, the whole deal, and I'll go ahead and create a pull request like this. All right, so this will, again, do some checks and different things as that it normally would do. But then what this will do is the Ampt app that's installed in GitHub, in your GitHub account, will actually now start a preview build for this. And if we go back over to our go back over here, we'll see that this preview build is automatically starting to build. We can go into deployments here and see that it's deploying. We can see the git commit that it's tied to. So this is all happening for us automatically. So again, depending on what it's building, what it's doing, right, it might take a few minutes for this to build. It usually takes about 60 seconds or so, something to that effect. But essentially what this is doing, and what it just did, is this has deployed a completely separate AWS account for us with our application code running, production parity environment, right? This is exactly what it's going to look like in production. Now I can go ahead and open this, jump into it, and I have now, and again, zoom in, too much, zoom in. So this is my application now running in this awesome data, blah, 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 whatever, amp.app, completely isolated from my developer sandbox version that's running here. So again, if I was to go in and I was to add hello like this, and I hit save here, this has gone ahead and will update this version of it, because this is my sandbox. This is what I'm connected to. But this particular version of it here, which is live and running in the cloud, will not change. Here's what's really cool. If I say, actually, you know, I looked at what you wrote, but we really should add hello and 3 exclamation points there in the beginning. I say, okay, fine. So I make that change. I preview it on my side. Everything looks good. And then I can say, you know, get status over here, right? So I'm going to add this, and then I'm going to do get commit update with hello, something like that. I do that, and then I git push this. And then what this is doing is this is updating, obviously, I think we all know how Git works, or I think we all know how Git works. So this is updating behind the scenes, and it has added a new commit to my pull request, and so it automatically starts rebuilding this preview environment for me. Super helpful, right? So now I don't have to go and create a new commit and do this and tell it to republish. I just can start adding my changes, and this will go ahead and do that. Now you see, it's the same exact URL. So we're updating the same environment with these different changes, and this is super powerful because, again, just send a Slack message or whatever you're doing saying, okay, it's updated now, go ahead and check it out. And if I go here to this live version, refresh it, I now get hello. Okay, great. Everyone's happy with this beautifully designed blog, exactly how it's working. So let's go ahead and actually merge these changes in and get this to deploy to our production account. So I'm going to go ahead and merge this change in like this. And then if we go back over to our thing here and go back to this, we'll see that our preview environment has been deleted. So the preview environments automatically get cleaned up. All those resources are free again. And not only do they get cleaned up in that they, you're not using the compute and all this other stuff that's running anymore, but you're actually no longer using the it actually removes all the data, cleans all that stuff up for you. So it just recycles the account. It's gone. They're ephemeral, right? And the coolest thing about that is that, again, because they are repeatable and consistent and secure and all this kind of stuff, you can create as many of these as you want to and keep throwing them away. I'm not sure AWS loves how quickly we recycle AWS accounts. That's why we do recycle them, and you know, we don't delete the account and then we recycle it. But anyways, it works. Excuse me. So a couple different things here. So now this is deploying here. If I click into this and I went over to deployments, we'll see that this is deployed. Here's our new URL. I can go ahead and launch this URL, and I get this beautiful site here now. And all I did, other than jump through some hoops because I was trying to figure out how the excuse me, how something wasn't working right. Generally, all you have to do is just, that's it, connect your GitHub repo, and it's done. And all of these features, all of this stuff is built in for you. Okay, so let me see here. Let me just check, make sure I haven't missed too much. All right, yeah, I got a few from Emra. Yes, this, a few, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, it's always fun when you're doing some of these things. So, okay. So let's talk about now. So we did a pull request. We edited the pull request. We merged the pull request. We saw how that all works. Super great. All right. Let's talk about dynamic content. So one of the things about something like 11T, for example, is 11T relies generally on dynamic data in order to build a site for you. So yes, you can go ahead, and the way that we've set this up over here is we've created these static posts, and we did post 1 and post 2, post 3, right? So those will get generated over here as posts like this. And this all works fine, great. But what if we want to add some dynamic data? So let's do something with something dynamic. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my developer sandbox here. I'm going to go into the data, and I'm going to create a new item, and I'm going to call this, let's say, I don't know, let's call it videos, right? Because we're doing a live stream anyway. So we're going to create a collection called videos. So we'll do videos : and this will just be, test 1, or test 1. And then within this, we'll create a title, and we'll say this is a test title. Title like that. I'm only going to do that quickly just because I want to export the schema. So I'll save this. We'll see that we have our information here. And then another very, very cool feature of the Ampt workflow, the local workflow that I think, didn't mean to do that, of the Ampt workflow that I think we've talked about, is the ability for you to export and import data into your data. So I'm just going to type export. This is going to export a data.json for me, which gives me this, the data that I've got stored in the sandbox here. I'm going to remove this created and modified. Again, this is just information, but if I'm syncing this back up, that information is ignored, so I don't really need it. All right, so I've got, this is a test title, and let's go ahead and add something like duration, and we'll say 1 hour, like that. And then I'm going to copy this, and I will do videos test 2 like that, and hello from another video. And this one is 45 minutes. Okay, all right. I know that's not super exciting. But the cool thing that we can do here now is that we can just type import, and that's now actually sucked that data into the system for us. So if I get all items here, now I can see that both of those are there, plus the extra information that we added with the duration. Okay, great. That's not super exciting. Well, I think it is. But let's use that now to actually do something with a build. All right, so one of the things you can do in 11T, and again, this is just specific to them, but you can do it any way you want to, is you can create, and let me just double check and make sure that I have this configured correctly. 11T, yes. So what I want to do is create a data folder like this, and then this will be underscore data like that. Okay, that should work. I don't need to do those there. All right, and then under site, I can create a new folder. Try that again, a new folder that I am going to call underscore data like that. Okay, so now anything that I put in there, if I create a simple, let's create a new file, and I'll call this authors.json, and then in here I can create a JSON file and say Jeremy, and then is cool. Look at that. All right. Now I think I like Copilot now, even though I know I'm not cool. That's fine. That was pretty funny. All right, so name age 25. What are you doing to me, Copilot? You're missing 20 years there. 20 years there, but that's fine. Okay, I'm gonna save that. Anyway, so this creates this, and then let's create another author, and we'll make our other author be, I don't know, Bill, and his name is Bill, like this, and his age is, I don't know, maybe let's say he's younger than I am. Okay, so we've now created this file here. And then what we can do is within any of these, we can actually use that. There's like a thing called the data cascade. So I think if you do, I think we would have to do, what do we call authors? So we would do authors, and then I think you can just do dump. Does that work? Let's see if that works. Okay, it's going to give me an error. It doesn't like that. It's saying Is it var dump? I know there's one of these things that will work. Maybe not. The other thing we should probably do is stop and restart the dev server, only because we made a configuration change. So it doesn't like that. We'll just spit out authors and see if that works. Are we running this? Dev, okay, okay, this was on post number 1, so go over to here, and this is our first post. Hold on, let me open this up here. Object. Okay, so I thought you could use dump, but basically we should be able to then reference me as the person, and then we can type in name, for example, and then that will work there. So essentially it's cascading that data is now available to us. We can use that. We can change it. We could, if we change this to Bill, obviously this should it'll change to Bill. But basically it's just cascading data for us. So it's super helpful. So let's actually write, so let's do one other thing then. So now what we want to do is, because this is pretty cool, is we create a new file, and let's call this videos, and we'll make this videos.js. And then the way that this works is that this will spit out anything that you return. So if we just returned from this, if I just return test videos like this, spell it correct, videos like that, that says a legal return statement. Yes, I think you're right, because it needs to return, I think it needs to return an object, I think. Let's see if this works. Return test videos, test file change videos. Okay, I think that works. So then what we should be able to do is jump into post 1, and we can do videos, videos.test like that, and then this is file change, legal return statement. What are we doing? All right, what time is it? Noon? Okay, well, if you're sticking around, stick around with me for a minute, because we're going to figure this out. We're going to go to the 11T site. I could look this up somewhere. Actually, maybe that's what I'll do. It might be easier. 11T Milano, every time. 11T JS, how about that? Okay, simpler. 11T documentation and docs here. And we want to do data cascade. So global data files, computed data. This is what it is. No, that's computed data files. It's global data files. Here we go. All right. So user list, folders using JavaScript data files, JS, module.exports. If you return a function, we'll use the return value from that function. You can export data from a JavaScript to add data to the / to execute arbitrary if you do exports, or module.exports there. Okay, so we need to export. So I guess it's got to do an export, which makes sense, which I should have known. All right, so then this should be, I don't know if this will work because it's a J. Well, let's try it. Module.exports. And sure, let's do it as a function. Actually, we're going to have to do it as a function, I think, because we're going to need to load some data, and then we'll just spit that. Oops. This. Let's see. I don't think that's right. Module exports equals function. Let's try this. I think it's going to fail on the module.exports thing anyways, but I could be wrong. Let's try it again. Clear. All right, so this is exports for videos. All right, so then if that worked, make sure I'm on my localhost one here. The dev server running, already running. So exports videos. Oh, because I think I'm, let's see, videos.test. What will this do? Oh, it doesn't like that. Because it's a module. Yeah, that's what I actually thought that was going to happen, because it doesn't do that. So I think we could, let's try this. If we say, hey, we're not a module, and then we run it that way, Let's see what this does. Yeah, okay, so that worked. All right, good. So now we can just return this like this. And now we can do something very cool where we can, oh, but now, oh, that's not good. Messenger crashed. Interesting. Okay, so we actually don't want to do it this way anyways, because we, yeah, hold on. Let me try something. I'm going to import the import data from @ampt/data, and we might not have data installed, so I'll just install it if we don't. Ampt/data. I think we have it installed, but anyways, so we've installed that. I think you can just do, I wonder if you can just do export default. I think that's actually will work, because I think that's how we did it here, right? We just do, yeah, export default async. Yeah, that's what we want. Okay, that should work. So then we actually have to go back and change this to just regular JS, because it will be a module. For some reason, it doesn't like that. Check this. Okay, let's see what that does. Test, that works. All right, let me change this to test1, save that. Test1, perfect. Okay, so now we have data here. So what we can actually do is we should be able to run, and I think we could do it within here. I don't think it really matters where we do it, but let's do it within here. So we're going to do const videos equals data.get, and we're going to return videos star. Wow. Okay. How about that? All right. So a couple things we can do is, first of all, we can log out these so that we can see what we actually get back. And then we'll just say test1, promise is pending. Yep, because this needs to be async and this needs to await. So we'll do that. Try that again. And we get undefined. So data, yep, because we did that wrong. Try it again. Now we get these two things. Okay, so now we have videos. So what we want to actually do is we want to get videos.items like this. And that's going to give us the key and the value and so forth. And then what we actually really want to do is we want to return video.items. We want to return that back from that. And I think we could actually do a quick map and say that we really only want the video dot value like this. How's my JavaScript? Okay, and just to test this, I'll dump this here like this, save that, and then we get, okay, an array with that, blah, blah, blah. Perfect. Okay, so we don't need to show this anymore. We'll save that. Go back to post 1, and when we do videos here, this is going to give us object, object, object. But what we can do from this is we can do, if this will help me write it, it'll be even better. So we do for, let's see, video in videos, like this. Then I think this works correctly. And for, and then in here we would type out video dot description, title, right? Title. See if that works. Hey, look at that. This is a test title. Okay, good. So now we could add some pizzazz to this, but let's say, I don't know, we'll div that, and we'll, and it was out, so we had a duration, right? So let's copy this and add duration. All right, so if you're still with me, I appreciate it, because I think this is cool. All right, so we've got, let me add some extra space here. Do class equals pt4, like that. All right, so this is our test title, hello. Sorry, I have to add some color to this. So text, let's make it green so that it doesn't fit in at all with the rest of the style. So it really stands out. What do we do? Text green 600. Oh, I might just need to refresh. Text green 600. Why didn't that work? 500? are we not running? Sorry, hold on one second. Let me just make sure we're running CSS, build, dev, posts. Yeah, so, all right, I'm gonna just run dev again just to make sure that that CSS is running, which it should be. Oh, I don't know why we're not getting that color. That's bothering me. Text green 500. Must not be generating this. Oh, I know why. Because that's not okay. I know why. I don't have the. I don't think I have it looking in that whole directory there. So when it's actually doing the this here, it's looking at site. So HTML and JS. It's not looking at MD files. So if we added MD files there, and then typed in green 500, then that should pick that up, and then I would think that will work. Okay. All right. See, just got to think through it, and we got a whole bunch of stuff spelled wrong. Anyways, okay, so here we are now. We've created this thing, and we've put this content is now in this sandbox here for us, and that works great. All right, here's what the problem is going to be. So I'm going to go and I'm going to actually go back into this here. I'm going to go into my settings, and well, actually, yeah, I'm going to go into the settings, into the Git, and I'm going to allow these because I want to show you this quickly. Okay, so then from here, I'm going to go ahead and type share, and this is going to create a new preview environment of the of this particular thing here. And actually, this might be we can merge directly into the main to show you the other piece of it there. So so if we run this now, this is going to create you know what, I'm going to stop this only because I think it's going to take too long. All right, we made a bunch of changes. Let's put it that way. All right, we know what we've done, right? So let's go ahead and merge this in because we're running out of time. So our git status here. Oh, also we want to do git checkout main. Oh, yes, we should be able to check this out without overwriting it. Oh, it doesn't like that because we've done some things. Oh, fun. All right, well, let's do this. Git checkout. Let's do git branch data like that, and we will git checkout data. And then we are going to do git add, git commit, data test, git push. All right, so we've created a new branch here. So go back to code. We should have a new branch called data. I'm going to compare. I'm going to create a pull request, but I'm just going to actually merge this in right away. I don't want to see the preview. I want to just merge this directly in. I'm assuming that I've done all these tests and everything looks great. Okay, so I've merged this in directly. Oh, I actually should have showed you. I should show you the preview thing because it does copy some data over and things like that. But anyways, so for the sake of argument, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go directly this way because I'll show you some things that you can do around this. Okay, so so this one we don't need. We'll delete this. Well, yes, we can just delete it. So here's our production environment that should have a new deployment running now on this Git URL here. So this Git commit hash. So this is deploying, and if we go now, I'm going to close this one, and that's our localhost one. Good. Okay, so I'm going to close this. And we've got that open. We can close that. This is our development stack here. So this is our live version of the, I don't think this is actually. I'll have to figure out which one is which. Sorry, these get confusing. Okay, so let me go back here and just show you that. Oh, that did create the environment, that preview environment. I should have left that up and running. All right, if I grab my URL here, oh, this is solid binary. Okay, so that was a different one. All right, so this, if I go into our first post, I should see that it generated those two things for me. But if I'm in my production account here, which is now deployed, so I can go ahead and check this out. If I go into this as our first post, it doesn't have that information. The reason why it doesn't have the information is not because it wasn't published correctly, it's that there is no code, there's no data there for it to use. All right, so this is to demonstrate something pretty simple that I think we see quite a bit, especially when you're deploying static sites like this. So first of all, I want to get that data into production. So there's a sort of So if my data JSON here, this data would be created outside of, outside of some other process. Like I wouldn't be using my dev data in order to send that to production. But what I am going to do is this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go into the data on this production account. Notice that there is nothing here, so I'll create a new record here, and I'll call this videos, and I'll say test 1. And this needs to be, needs to be wrapped like this. Okay, so this is a test title, and I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is going to be, I don't know, 1:15. Maybe we don't need that hour there, like that. Okay, so let's save this. All right, so now I've created a new record in the production data, but these are statically generated sites. So this page here, sorry. One is it? This one here. This is my production site. It's not updated. All right, so I need this to rebuild. So how do I get this to rebuild? So I could make a change to it, but what if I'm using a content management system or something else, and I just want it to rebuild whenever I need it to rebuild to refresh data? So we can do this manually. We added this feature in on the deployments where you can just say trigger deployment. So if I click trigger deployment, this has now triggered a new deployment, and this will go ahead and run the deployment from the same exact Git repo, the last deployment that it had run. It will run that again. So we'll give this a second here because it does take a second or so to actually run the deployment. But this is what we want to update. So just give this a second while this goes. We do give you sort of the full deployment logs as well, so if you want to look through exactly what happened there. Okay, so this says it's deployed. So this is that. If we refresh this, okay, we get that. All right, now that's great. I can manually go in and refresh, like, oh, hey, we published a new blog post somewhere in a content management system. How do let's go ahead and manually republish this thing. That's a super pain. We don't want to have to be able to do that. So I could hit the trigger button, like I said, but that's kind of a pain. We want to do something even better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in to my data here, and I'm going to open this one up. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to create another. One, and we're going to call this videos colon test 2. Excuse me. And I'll paste this in, and we'll say this duration is 1 minute and 35, or 1 hour and 35 minutes, and I'm going to say this is from a webhook. Spell it correctly and hit save. Okay, so again, I've added something new here. This is our live one. I refresh this. We're not seeing anything there. Also, just to be clear, even in our dynamic one, I refresh this. Oh, I stopped. Did I stop this? Yeah, I did. Even in my dynamic version of this site that's running locally, again, this is pulling data from a different database, a different table. This is a completely isolated environment. So I'm seeing this differently here. So those, we see different data, and here I've added a new thing, but this is a statically generated site. Okay, here's the cool thing we just added. So you go into the site itself, you go into settings, and we added this new thing called webhooks. So I can create a webhook here, and I can say, I'll say my, CMS, we'll call it webhook, why not? So here's my CMS webhook, and now I have an option where if I'm connected to a GitHub repository, I can go ahead and select which branch I want to use as the source branch. So this is cool. I can have webhooks that do some staging deployments and some other things like that for me if I want to. But in this case, I want to use main. If I don't select anything here, if I clear this out, then actually what this will do is this would actually just use the cached version of the archive that we have. So we cache a version of the archive so that we can rebuild that at any time. So we can use that. But in this case, I'm going to say, no, I want to use this. I'm going to go ahead and add this, and then this is going to give me this my CMS webhook, and you have this X post that you can use with a secret attached to it. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to delete this very soon thereafter, so hopefully nobody triggers a build while we're sitting here. But essentially, I just run this post. This says it returns the instance name, the branch name, and whether or not it worked. And yes, success was true. So now this should, if I go prod environment and look at my deployments, I can see that I have another deploy running that is flagged with webhook. It tells me what webhook it used to trigger it. And now, if this just takes a couple of minutes here to do the build, or about a minute or so, so as soon as that is done, which it did very, very quickly, when I refresh this page, I should now have my extra data there. Okay, so that was very long. We are way, way, way over time. But let's see, just make sure that I covered everything I wanted to cover. So I think we did. So yeah, so that's Ampt. I know we went through a lot of stuff today. Very, very cool things that you can do with these workflows, and it is super simple. I don't know why I'm typing my own name in there. I was going to type in get amped. Very, very easy to set up. I mean, there's also the workflows that I showed you. You could type in share. When you type in share, that actually creates a preview environment that copies your data and storage. So it's super fast for you to be able to create these preview environments, that basically mask, sort of take a snapshot of your current workflow and where you are there. So anyways, okay, that was long. Give Ampt a try. Tell us what you like about it. Tell us what you don't like about it. Do you like this model where you sort of have a self-provisioning runtime running behind the scenes, within an AWS account that automatically does all this configuration for you? What else would you like to see? What else would you like the workflows to be? Let us know. Anyways, this was great. Apologies for a little bit of a bump in the road there in the middle, but we will make sure that that is all solid with this new feature that we added, which was the webhook thing, by the way. If I didn't get that across, but anyway, so. Check it out. Play around with Ampt. Also, I forgot to mention, I was in light mode today. I usually wear a dark shirt, but I was like, oh, maybe I'll wear a light shirt to sort of offset the dark background. So hopefully all of you that love dark mode are not mad at me, but what are you going to do? All right, I will see you next week. Check out, follow us on X, follow us on LinkedIn. We do post, not a ton of stuff, but we are going to start, trying to post some more helpful videos and so forth. Check out the documentation, all kinds of stuff in there, how to use all the different frameworks that you can use with Ampt, and just how you can build so fast. I don't know, I love it. It's super fun. I build stuff with it all the time. So anyways, we'll see you. Reach out. We'd love to have you try out Ampt.